As we're all well aware now, the fine folks over at IK Multimedia in the past couple weeks released their incredible new Tonex platform, which allows us to model our guitar amplifiers, our pedals, and capture them so that we have them in our computer to work within the Tonex ecosystem. It is a fabulous, fabulous piece of software. We've received an update that's already improved it, and there will be more to come that will add functionality. And I gotta say, I'm really impressed with it. But one topic of conversation I hear asked a lot is, once we've captured a model and we want to tweak the sound within Tonex, maybe add more gain, maybe pull some gain out, maybe add some bass, treble, middle, we do have the ability to shape the tone further. Now the question is, does that tone shaping retain the accuracy of the original model? Now, my personal feelings on this is that it can't possibly. It's not going to know the frequencies that the tone stack of that amp are dialed into, or how that circuit is designed just from the test tones and the learning process it goes through. It's also not going to know how high the gain can be pushed on a channel necessarily, or how low it can go and the characteristics it has. So I don't feel like it's even possible personally for those controls to act accurately with the amp or pedal that we've created the model from. But I thought, wouldn't it be fun to do a little video and really kind of go as much into detail within reason and see how grabbing a tone model of a particular amp, in this case I'm going to use my Rev Generator 100R Mark III amp, and then go and make the same adjustments on the modeled tone in Tonex, for instance, taking the bass control and cranking it to 10, and going back and taking the bass control and cranking it to 10, also on the real amp, and seeing how they differ or how maybe close they are, and just more for fun and to kind of understand how Tonex would compare to the original model. Now, a couple disclaimers here. Like I've said, I don't think it's going to be close. I'd be open to be pleasantly surprised, and it would be kind of fun if they are closer than I would think. But a couple things to keep in mind here are the results I get from my Rev Generator amp could be extremely different than from doing any other amp, really depending on how that circuit was designed, how the tone stack functions, etc. So the results I get here today may not be consistent with the results you would get if you used completely different pedal models or amp models and ran the same tests. So this really isn't scientific in any way. It's not meant to be. This is just more of an interesting video to kind of see how close it is once we start moving some controls with this particular model, and it might be a fun thing for you to try also. So my basic methodology is that I captured a tone model from my Rev Generator amplifier. I worked off of channel 3. Everything was basically at noon. Gain was at noon, treble, middle, bass was at noon, presence was at noon, just so that I had a wider range on each side to go with. And when we do our tone model, all those controls end up at noon. So it wasn't designed to dial in the perfect sound or anything, just to get a starting point. So I then ran the direct tone model through an IR from my RAV 212 impulse response bundle, which I have available at my website at the link below, along with a lot of my Tonex preset packs that are also available at the links below. A little side point, I also have an affiliate link below for both Amplitude 5 and Tonex if you want to help support my channel. And if you're going to buy those anyways, you can click my link and I get a little tiny kickback, which helps me to keep doing these videos if you enjoy them, and I hope you do. So once we captured that tone model, what I did is I then recorded a bunch of instances of the real amp with different settings. So I went through, first and foremost, I compared the real amp and the Tonex model without altering any settings, just to get a baseline of how accurate was this to begin with. And I think the tone model was really quite accurate. It's a direct capture. I did the training on advanced mode, so it's about as good as it's going to get. And I was very happy with how close they were. Then I did a series of other adjustments. I cranked the bass on the Tonex model to 10, and then I cranked the bass on the Rev Generator to 10. Then I did another one, bass on 0 on both. Another one with mids on 10 and mids on 0. Treble on 10, treble on 0. presence on 10, presence on 0. Then I did it with the gain control. I started off by going to the 9 o'clock position, so bringing the gain back to the 9 o'clock position. Obviously, we'd already heard the noon position since that was the baseline starting point that the tone model was based off of. Then I went to the 3 o'clock position and then the full position. I think the gain test is going to be a little more interesting. Now, you might wonder, how did I capture all this? Well, I just reamped a track of me playing an extremely short riff. So what you'll hear, and it'll be labeled on the screen, is the real amp version with, let's say, the bass control cranked to 10, and right after it, you will hear the Tonex version with the bass cranked to 10. Same reamped part, same performance. So everything else stays the same. That's about as scientific as we can get here. Making sure that the volume levels were matched as closely as possible. So very interesting stuff. So I'm going to play those files for you now straight through. I'm not really going to give my opinion on it. There were a few that I was surprised how close they were, and others that I thought, wow, that's quite different. So mostly with the EQ settings, but it was really interesting, and I just wanted to share this with you guys, and I hope somebody gets at least some enjoyment out of this. And like I said, I don't really think this proves anything or shows anything. It was just more kind of for fun, and for anybody who does have that question, it gives them something to look at least with this particular model. So let's take a listen to these sound files. All right, so what did you think? I thought that was kind of interesting. You'll probably agree with me that there were certain settings that were a lot closer and maybe even very close, whereas others were quite dramatically different. Now, one real important thing to point out, though, if we go over to Tonex, and I'm using my Fried Guy Ultimate preset pack that's available at the link below too from my website, along with the same IR that was used in all those sound files, you'll notice that if we go up here to our amp controls and this first little selection, we have the ability to alter not only how much bass or how little bass is going to be boosted or cut, we also have the ability to pick which frequency we boost or cut, which can be a really important part of getting it to match an amplifier. So if we did know how the tone stack was functioning on a particular amp that we were modeling, that let's say the bass control was boosting a particular frequency, we could tailor this to get even closer than the examples that I use today. We also have the same thing for mids. We can choose the frequency, but not only that, we can choose the Q, or the bandwidth of how wide a set of frequencies these settings are going to affect. So really handy. And we can also choose the treble frequency. We can also choose pre or post, so the position of this EQ, which again can affect the outcome. So I think a real stroke of genius by the folks at IK Multimedia was giving us the ability to come in and tweak these controls to a much finer degree to be able to maybe match even closer the tone model, because they're not going to have any way of deducing what these settings could possibly be on an amp. But if we do know, or we feel we know what they do, we can come in and fine tune them ourselves, which is a huge step into getting these parameters to behave much more like the original tone model. The EQ is an interesting thing though, because a lot of times after the fact, once we have a tone recorded or in a particular venue to play live, we're going to cut some bass or add some mids or add some treble or cut some treble. However, we need to adjust it for the particular situation. I don't know if too many people are going to be too concerned that that's not reacting exactly like the bass control on my rev amp. You know, as long as it's giving us what we need. I think the one factor would be maybe the gain control, where we'd feel a little more confident knowing that if we did dial the gain back a bit, it is acting more like the rev amp or whatever amp we captured. But really at the end of the day, I think the important thing is just, are we happy with the way it sounds at that moment in time? If we've made a capture, and even if it doesn't sound identical and behaving identical to the amp we have, does it sound great? And if the answer is yes, then I would just stop worrying about it and I would just play and be happy using this tool to make some great music. So there's some of my thoughts on it and some examples for you to ponder over and come up with your own conclusions. I don't think there's any point in me going over with a fine-tooth comb what I thought about these, because everybody's probably going to listen and hear things slightly different anyway. So I hope that was enjoyable. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me and taking the time to take a listen to these examples. Please like the video and please share it with anybody who you think would get some use or enjoyment out of watching it. Also, please subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. I'll be back really soon with some more. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Ciao for now.